Welcome to Dayton Warcry Club. I'm Warren, and today I'm joined again by my co-host Fred Shred. Today we'll finish up our tier list for the current iteration of Warcry. Hey, good evening, Fred. How you been?
Doing all right. Not getting as much hobbying done as I would like, but not too bad, all things considered.
Yeah, I switched jobs, and so I'm not teaching. I'm learning the new job. I'm not teaching at night anymore. So in theory, I have a lot more time. I got a whole ton of stuff I'm working on, and it's hard to kind of like concentrate on one thing. So it's a whole lot to do.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
So yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that. We're gonna finish up the tier list and get some other events. But first, let's talk about Origins. So I was in Origins about a week ago, as of the time of recording here, and you are talking to your Origins narrative champion.
There he is, the man, the myth, the legend.
Yep, as close as you're gonna get to see in my face so far. So shout out to Jolly, the TO for this. He had kind of a rough go of it. So Origins is more of a board game convention. I was there Friday night, and there was supposed to be open play, but no one showed up for it, so that got canceled. So I went looking around the local area, and so one of the local game shops, I found some out of print Underworld's warbands and 2 big boxes of Warcry terrain. So that was really the find of the weekend, not at the convention. And then on Saturday for the narrative event, there was myself signed up, one other who couldn't make it, and Jolly. So we played off one game for the championship. If I won, I get the gold medal, or if I lost, I would have gotten the silver. And so, but we talked a little bit about he's still kind of working on the tournament pack, like what he wants to do for Gen Con, since he's the TO there. And so we play tested a mission. And so we play tested Bloodmarked. That one has some high reviews from TheSaltySea, I think. And it's actually a pretty interesting one. We picked a deployment group for the tournament packet where everyone starts on the board. And then we got, for the twist, Winds of Fate. And so you get 7 initiative dice per round. And so you get a lot of like triples and stuff like that. So it's a very, very action-packed, hard-hitting set of cards to come up. And you're going to be getting like some big rolls on your initiative dice. You get access to a lot of triples and quads and some big action. So I played my Skaven versus his Sylvaneth, and yeah, we didn't take pictures because I was concentrating more on the game, but it was my double Rat Ogre list.
Was he playing Skaith Sylvaneth?
He had a couple. He had some models from Skaith's warband. He had some models from the other warband. A couple of like the two-hander sword dudes that kind of hit pretty hard.
Hunters, yeah.
Yep, he had a one Kurnoth hunter like from the regular list, and then one Arch Revenant.
Okay.
And so his strategy was, his Bloodmarked, and this is a really interesting mission because there's some play into like who you nominate as your Bloodmarked model. So he picked an archer that was kind of in the back ranks, and I picked one of my Rat Ogres since it had the most hit points. And so my Bloodmarked Rat Ogre, I kind of kept it in the back. He smashed a little bit of stuff, but I put up screens to try to like make sure that his harder hitting guys couldn't get into combat with him, and that seemed to work. He was taking some just chip damage from range attacks, and then I just sent my non-Bloodmarked Rat Ogre, just sent it straight towards the back ranks, trying to murder his archer along with Master Molder as a backup. And it went pretty quick. I had a chance turn 2. I rolled a rampage turn 2, and he had a netter. Sylvaneth has a guy with a net ability, so he netted my Rat Ogre, so he couldn't rampage into the back ranks. And then it came down to turn 3. Turn 3 again, I roll a rampage, and I win initiative, and he burns a wild die to tie initiative, and so then it comes down to a roll off with the Rat to try to stop my Rat Ogre from getting there, and he winds up winning the roll off and taking initiative, and he has to net the Rat Ogre, and he fails the net, and so then it goes to my turn, and he has bodies in the way, and I can't necessarily rampage the Rat Ogre straight into his archer, but I just go through a guy. And so I think I go move, attack, kill a guy, move, attack with all those actions. And I managed to get there and one shot the archer once the Rat Ogre got there. So that was the game. It was pretty interactive. I think I was evening out the model count anyway. But so this is a really interesting mission set, and you can expect this one to be in the Gen Con packet as well. We'll talk a little bit about it towards the tail end. He's not going to use either of the treasure missions. He's probably going to use the 4 other missions from the TOC. This set of missions will probably be in the mix, and then possibly one other one. I'm not sure exactly what yet.
Cool. Sounds good. I'm looking to make that trip if I can, but we'll see how some things shake out.
Yeah, we'll definitely be represented.
Very cool.
And hobby update. So the last hobby update, I was doing a lot of building. Now I spent a couple weekends. I got stuff primed. So I got Red Harvest Train. I got Starter Train. I got some Skaven. I got the Storm Fiends. I got Spike Claw Swarm.
Spike Claw Swarm. That's the one. Yes.
I got Spike Claw Swarm primed. And so I'll be kind of getting started on that. I got since then I got some stuff kind of like dry brush Zenithal, and got some contrast paints, got some new army speed paints. So I'll be kind of learning those on some of these models, as well as kind of using some of my old techniques on this. So really looking forward to that.
Cool.
And you're back in the game now too, it looks like.
A little bit. I built these. I did today actually, as of this recording. I built, working on my Idoneth. That's been on the kind of the next to-do list for a while. But my hands are still in bad shape. I have a diagnosis now. It's rheumatoid arthritis, and it's been really acted up. But I decided I wanted to build these, and these are Zenithal, and then washed with Nuln Oil, and then dry brushed with pure white. To bring out some of the highlights and give them some depth, but also the Nuln Oil, of course, pulls out all, and the dry brushing pulls out all of the detail on the models. So the kind of color scheme for my Idoneth is going to be kind of phantasmal or ghostly, and I'm going to paint the eels because they're just such big and cool looking models. But that'll take a lot of time. But this is sort of a proof of concept for the Thralls, and I'm pretty happy with how it came out. I'm going to do the bases and everything, so that hasn't been done yet. But just for trying to pull some detail out of the models while being unable to highlight and that kind of stuff, I think this worked okay.
I don't know if you saw, you put it on our group chat. Zach was asking about Zach comments about the bases as well.
I think the bases are going to look really good when they're painted. Yeah, they're seafloor bases that I got at a local gaming store. So I don't know. It'll be still a long time work in progress. You can see my bull ogres, bull gores in the background there that still haven't been painted, and et cetera, et cetera. But we're going to kind of slowly work through this stuff.
Yeah. For me, it's going to be a case of like, you're going to do this, and then when I get close to completion on something, but like, all right, let's hammer this out and finish something. But let's get back to the tier list. All right, next up we got ogres.
Took a little while to put one in good, but here we are.
Good, bordering potentially on a tier higher if we created one.
So here's the thing about ogres: they don't have a 10-inch flyer, and so they have to make up for that, right? And the way they make up for that is Thunderfists are insane. Thunderfists are still insane. They got 0 point adjustment in Toma Champions, despite being the best shooting unit in the game. They are 250 points for a great attack profile, and the thing that really sets them apart is the ability Might Makes Right, which allows them to take additional attack actions if they kill something. Unlike most of those abilities, the Ogre one doesn't require it to be range 3 or less. So when they are being out-activated, they can, from very early on, often from the very first battle round, they can start, each Thunderfist can kill two chaff models a turn, sometimes 3, and even up that activation deficit very quickly. It's also really easy to play insane heavy hitting, some of the best heavy hitting models in the game, and still get 7 or 8 models on the battlefield
because the
Gnoblars
Gnoblars can pad it. Yep. And good luck engaging them in melee as well. Like Thunderfists are not tyrants in hand to hand, but they'll still hit you pretty hard.
Yes, and if you have a glutton or even a gorger or a yeti to intercept and kind of block for your Thunderfists, that's the thing about ogres is they're so ridiculously deep. They have
there's a lot of good options, right? We were talking about gorgers, but yetis. You have other options for some semi-fast units.
Yes, and that hit very hard. And then like their standard elite melee unit is like better than most like top of the line fighter. They're like mid-range fighter, the gorger or the glutton. And then they go all up and down. They have like the gut lord and the tyrant, which are just unassailably like the best melee fighters in the game. And then they have like their mid-range units are like better than most factions elite units, and they're like sneaky fast fighters, or like they hit insanely hard but still move like 8 inches. And then Gnoblars like on top of that, unlike say like the orcs or the Stormcast or whatever, they have a 45-point chaff unit to like fill in all those gaps. Just a ridiculously complete faction. Really, really good. I'd love to play them against spiders sometime and see how their ability to delete chaff helps.
That's the one thing we'd have to that's like the one thing we'd have to actually test to see, okay, are spiders, okay, spoiler alert, are spiders gonna be alone in an S tier?
Right.
Or do they share that spot with ogres?
Right. Because ogres were what could keep Skaven in check, right? Like they could shoot giant rats and plague monks and chew them up with their thunderfists effectively enough to even up that activation disadvantage. That was kind of the old rock paper scissors metagame, right? Because then your Slaanesh Daemons were good against your ogres because they required like a few elite units to be good, and the Contorted Epitome could lock those down.
You turn off a Thunderfist, and then all of a sudden they got a 750-point army.
Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of the top 3. That's no longer the case, but each of those factions kind of still fulfills that role, and ogres are just absurdly good against chaff models. But if your opponent brings out an elite warband, then you're like, okay, fine. Like I'll just bring my elite fighters against your elite fighters and see who wins. Yeah, very, very good. The first warband I ever built in this game, and still one of my all-time favorites. Cool models, cool lore, and just a ridiculously competitive warband.
Mm-hmm.
Also, maybe the most competitive single box warband in the game. I know Plague Monks gets that a lot.
Yeah, Plague Monks.
A box of
lead belchers
can turn into 2 Thunderfists, a glutton, and then you pull the Gnoblars out, and you get a pretty competitive warband in one box.
Okay, next up we got Ossiarch Bonereapers. So these guys are average. However, I will say that they are pretty impressive. They are pretty impressive average.
Yeah, I don't know much about them, so I'll defer to you.
Yeah, so we did a little deep dive. Someone was asking on Discord, and I did a deep dive for him to kind of come up with. So you got Mortec guards at 90 points. As a 90-point chaff model. They got great blades. They got the 2/5 attack profile. They had a big cost reduction, so they hit like trucks for their points cost. You have access to some 8 move flyers, so not super fast flyers, but you do have access to some flyers that can deal a little bit of damage, and they're pretty tough. The Morghasts, and you have a few models that hit like trucks. Mir Kanan from the Underworld's warband has a 3/6 attack pro. He's got a big ass axe that he can hit things with. So they're not super fast, but they do have some access to fast models, and they hit like trucks. 1 sec here. Let me double verify their movement speeds here for the rest of them. Okay, yeah, your chaff goes 3. You have some 5 movers and some 8-inch flyers. So you have a mix. You also have some mounted units if you want them. So you do have kind of a mix, but everything hits pretty hard for the points cost. So I'd put them, with that lack of mobility is going to keep them average, but they're going to hold their own just for just their efficiency. Okay, Scions of the Flame.
Don't know a ton about Scions of the Flame, so I'm going to defer to Zach's notes about them.
Okay.
Where he described them as pretty average.
Okay. Their thing is they have high strength to represent the flame. Fiery weapons are just considered to be like +1 strength, I guess, more or less. I saw an amazing quad happen against Zach the last time we played, and the quad did something like approximately 20 bajillion damage.
Sure.
It was like a 20 damage quad or something like that. I don't know. It was something crazy. It was whatever you get on quad 6s.
They are held back by the twin hammers that hold back. And again, by held back, I mean playable, but what's holding them out of like the elite tier. So I don't want to feed into the narrative that the bespoke warbands are bad, because you can see here we already have like a ton of them solidly in the average category here. And none of them, ceiling for them, right? Or one of them is in the bad.
This is my ulterior motive for setting up this tier list, because I wanted to actually sit down and do a deep dive and prove that, okay, yeah, they're not necessarily bad, but let's get real. There's a ceiling on the bespoke warbands, and that they're pretty much not going to get above, right? The AOS warbands just have way more options, better options. And so you're gonna have a couple
leaders generally.
Right? Yeah, you're gonna have a couple breakouts, but for the most part, they're all going to be like average at best.
Yep.
That was my hypothesis going into this.
And I think Fire Slayers are right in there.
Scions.
If someone who is a Scions expert wants to correct me on that, I'm all ears. I don't know a ton about them. But
we have to get Nathaniel on.
Yeah. But as of right now, that's where they're going.
All right, Seraphon, ton of options.
Nerfed, but still good. I like Slant Star Masters. They're not probably the most competitive way to build the list, but still good.
You have the shooting. You have the shooting from Salamanders. The skink handlers are cheap.
Yes. The Underworld Warband gave some interesting options. One of the lists we got recently from a tournament winning list played the Star Priest from the Underworld's Warband as its leader, which surprised me, but it still did really, really well.
I think part of the reason why he got played was the fact that he's a very cheap leader.
He's a very cheap leader.
You can roll hot on the spell. It's a typical spell, which with the 2 dice, which is like meh, but you can roll hot on it. But as a cheap leader, I guess you could do worse.
Yeah. They have tanky ranged unit or tanky mounted units. They have flyers. They have good infantry. They have good chaff. They can generate free activations with the handlers and the big lizards. I'd call them just another complete warband, right? They don't have a lot of glaring missing pieces.
You got flyers if you want them. You got mounts if you want them.
Yeah.
All right. The Boogeyman, Skaven. Of course they're good.
Yes. Quite good. Got a little bit of a nerf. Didn't affect them too much. Really, the only thing that's really knocked them down from like the absolute lords of the competitive metagame is just power creep. Nothing really changed about how they play.
The missions changed a little bit. More an emphasis on flyers, which they don't have.
Well, they do have fast non-flyers.
Evolution. Yeah, that's true. Everything moves at least 6. Just the evolution of the game.
Yes.
Let's say, right? The game becoming a little more nuanced and being a little more finesse about the new objectives and stuff like that.
And they did take a little bit of a nerf.
A little bit of a nerf, not too noticeable. My list lost 1 giant rat, but whatever.
Rat ogres are still point for point one of the true blenders in the game.
Yeah, everything it was good is still good. It's very, very hard. You have to try very hard to build a bad Skaven list.
Very deep list. Like, if you banned rat ogres from the game, like just like no army list can include any number of rat ogres, you could just plug in some storm fiends. Like,
yeah,
storm fiends don't even see play in Skaven competitive lists because rat ogres are so good. But storm fiends are insane. Like, they're a crazy good unit. They're just like, that's how good rat ogres are.
They're arguably, again, well, when I got mine built, I'll test them out, right? Try a storm fiend as opposed to a rat ogre packmaster combo. The benefit there is, right, you don't have to have a guy babysit him around. He can just like let him run around and smash things. It's more points though, but yeah, I'm looking forward to having that option.
And then like some of the other units like Death Masters, I think are really good. They don't see much play because the other options are so good. But I think the Death Master is a great unit.
Yeah, he's on my list again. I think I have a couple lists that have him in there as one of, if you're going to go in the 3 power projection build, right, 1 in each deployment group, Death Master is a solid inclusion in one of those deployment groups as a power projection piece.
Yes.
Move 7 can get a free move, so he's got a 14-inch threat range.
Yeah. Skaven is just very, very deep, very killy, very fast. They don't have flyers, but that's really the only thing they're lacking of our criteria. And they make up for it in general speed, numbers, and efficiency as far as damage dealing goes.
Yeah. All hail the Great Horned Rat.
Yep.
All right, next up, Tzeentch Daemons, still good.
Slaanesh Daemons.
Or Slaanesh, Slaanesh.
They lost a model worth of points, basically, in the nerf. But Daemonettes are still crazy good. They're sort of like Sisters of Slaughter. They roll a lot of dice. They have Sadistic Killers, which can up their damage output. Contorted Epitome is still maybe one of the better heavy units in the game. Best control piece in the game, but still a pretty solid fighter and ridiculously fast.
The list brewing that TheSaltySea and Mommy Slaanesh did found other good units too, right? It's more than just Daemonettes and Fiends and a Contorted Epitome. They're like finding other stuff too.
To be clear, the whole army list is basically Daemonettes, Fiends, Contorted Epitome. Like, they don't have a depth of units. They're like Corn Demons.
You have Enrapturous.
You have the Enrapturous. Infernal Enrapturous is the other leader option. You have, and then you have like
the large fiend, Blissbringer, right? You have the large fiend, the Blissbringer. Yeah, they're not. You're right. They're not super deep, but there's other ways to play it.
Yes,
they're slightly different.
I think the default competitive list plays a Blissbringer these days. But
the one that I was going to build and that would be modified. You still have like a complete extra set of Slaanesh Demons, right?
Yes.
When we start trading, oh yeah.
I have the start collecting box and then a box of Daemonettes, so I had a lot of models for them.
All right.
But,
it's still on the table. It's still on my to get list.
Very competitive. Has a lot of good options as far as damage output goes. The best control plan in the game. Just a good warband.
Okay, next up.
The not nearly as good Slaanesh Mortals.
Yeah, so I had not done too big a deep dive. Again, Salty and Mommy Slaanesh, we're talking about them too. They might be good.
They got a pretty big buff with the Underworld's warband. Those models are all pretty good. They short up a lot of weaknesses that they had. But their chaff unit is an archer, and not a particularly good one. Which hurts them. So you tend to like build them to be kind of mid-rangey, and like we said before, like mid-range units that like cost more than a chaff unit but can't one-shot a chaff unit are a great way to get out-activated in this game. Because your opponent that it brings a bunch of chaff is just going to have more models than you, and then you're going to wade in there to try to kill them. It's going to take you 2 battle rounds to kill one, and you're just like never going to catch up. They suffer from that a little bit because they have bad chaff. But I think that they're probably on the low end of average, but some pretty average. Slake Slash is a good model. Basilic is okay. Glissette is very, very points efficient. These are all from the Underworld's warbands, so they let you bring some good models, and then you can kind of fill in with like Twin Souls or whatever else you wanted to do. But they're hurt by the fact that their chaff unit is pretty bad.
Okay, next up, so Slaves Darkness. So
Slaves
this one,
Darkness.
They got a ton of options. Do they have the tools that they need to be good?
I think you might be able to put them in the might be good. I would maybe put them all the way in good. Marauders are very, very good.
Marauders are good.
Vanguard are good.
You don't have a flyer, right? All your power projection is coming from Vanguard or mounted units, and that's what's kind of leaving me to kind of like say,
very possible.
They're so badass. I don't know if I can put them in good though.
The Chaos Lord is one of the better.
Yeah, great ability, super points efficient, point for point.
His attack profile is 5.5/3.5, with a 2-inch range, which is solidly in the elite as far as attack profiles go. The Vanguard is not far behind that. Plus their ability, they have the Storm of Blows ability from the Akkelian King, where they just get on a double, they get half the value in bonus attacks. So Vanguard's got buffed in the Tome of Champions. A lot of options. 2 different Underworlds warbands give you some flexibility. The Thedras, whatever they're called, the Marauder type.
Godsworn Hunt.
Godsworn Hunt has Grawl, who is like the dog. Who was a little bit faster than normal, and also
you got Zarshia for teleport tricks if you want to take her in Kagra.
Yeah, that's Kagra's Ravagers, but the other one has like a javelin thrower that like moves a little faster, plus can throw the javelin. So they have some little tips and tricks, scattered around besides just really solid chaff and some of the better high-end fighters in the game. I like them a lot.
They fight. I know what you mean. They fight so good. Is that enough to put them up in the good category? That's a tough one. I'm not sure about this one.
Like, I think they're better than Caradon Overlords, for whatever that's worth. Like, I think they're probably better than Khorne Demons. So, as far as just like a competitive standpoint goes, so I don't know.
All right. Yeah. All right. We'll put them up here. Next one, no doubt, Soulblight's up in this category.
So many different ways to build Soulblight Gravelords. We've talked about that in a previous video.
Killer flyers, sweet lists. The technology is still coming out for them. Instead of using Graveguards, using Seneschals.
And we haven't really talked about that on the channel here yet, but really cool theory behind that list. Making the most out of Shambling Swarm, which is the Skeleton's movement ability, because they're moved through chaff unit.
Shambling Horde.
Yeah. Shambling Swarm is a Magic the Gathering card. Shambling Horde is a way for the skeletons to actually get into combat, but it burns a double for each skeleton you want to move. So this list had like a smaller amount of more elite skeletons, so that you weren't stressing your doubles too much.
2 Seneschals. 125 points, so a tankier Graveguard, which was nice also, right?
Yes. And then they could move themselves around the board with a double apiece, as opposed to having 5 or 6 Graveguard. You're not going to have enough doubles to get them all across the board without Flesh Eater Port's ally.
Yep.
So we're saying no allies.
Also, we didn't talk about this in the group chat. Someone else mentioned this on Discord. You can res the Seneschals. They have the minion ruin mark.
Yeah, if they're minions, then absolutely.
So you can bring them back, and the res brings them back at full health. So that brings them back at 15 health. So that's 125 points of value.
Yeah.
Cha-ching. I saw that in that list. Also a double Vargoyle, another great flyer.
8-inch move flyer, but still a pretty good flyer.
Yep. All the good lists from all the Soulblight Gravelords listed at Adepticon had at least one Vargoyle. Take it to the next level. All right, well, if one's good, two's got to be better. and you still have enough points to have a good body count with those 2 big flyers.
And you have Virko's Bloodborne, which are very fast.
Yep.
And can put out decent damage. You have super tanky Vampire Lords. You have 2 Underworld Warbands, 1 all mid-rangey vampires, which is an interesting kind of way to build a list, and 1 kind of all cheap skeletons.
Third cheapest.
Yeah.
You got a 40-point chaff unit.
Yeah.
You can.
So great warband. And of course, Graveguard are insane.
Someone on Discord said that they are the perfect warband.
Yeah, really good.
Like in terms of like just my point to that was they're extremely very well designed.
Yeah. Well, they're a second draft, right? Like Legions of Nagash was replaced by Soulblight Gravelords, so that was Games Workshop doing a revision of a warband, so it has a more modern design philosophy than some of the other foundational warbands. So, really good.
Maybe we see more of that in the future. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right. So next up, we got Spire Tyrants. So now we're getting to I only know this because I know it's here alphabetically. So this one's another bespoke one. I think this one's average. They got the.
I don't know much about Spire.
They're another Conan. They're another Conan warband.
Yeah, they're all the pit fighters, right? I don't know how their units fall particularly as competitive efficiency.
They have the standard guys, right? Max out at 20 points, I think.
20 wounds, but nothing extremely fast. Hard to get a decent heavy hitter into each deployment group. I think that's probably where they belong.
And next up, we have Splintered Fang. Actually, no, wait, we just did the Splintered Fang. No, we just did Spire Tyrants. Okay, that was, so this is the Splintered Fang then with the guys.
Yes.
Yep, I recognize them now. Another average one here.
Probably like at the top of average.
Oh, they have snakes. Yeah, they're the ones with the snakes.
Yes.
So snakes are 70 points now.
Yeah, they got nerfed.
A lot of attacks for 70 points is a good chaff unit. Yeah, so not enough to break them into good. The snakes, maybe they were good before, or maybe could have been broken into good with the snakes pre-nerf.
Yeah, but they were one of like the I won't say boogeyman, but they were considered one of like the cheese lists from the original Warcry with snake spam, and so snakes got nerfed. So here we are, but they can still bring snakes, if nothing else, and that is perfectly fine. But I agree with you; they're not as good as they used to be. So maybe average is the place for them. I would have maybe put them towards might be good, but I could leave them in average without too much of a fight.
All right. Next up, we got Stormcast Eternals, and
there's so many different Stormcasts. Okay.
So which ones of these are which? So we have Sacrosanct, Warrior, Vanguard, Thunderstrike.
Yes.
So that first guy, what's he from? I don't even know. Is he a Vanguard?
One of the I think it's a castigator.
Why don't we cut it here? That way we won't thrash so much. We'll figure out which ones of these are which.
That's going to be the thing, yes.
Here's where we left off. And so these are in alphabetical order, and it looks like we got Stormcast Eternals up next, specifically in order. Sacrosanct, if we're going in alphabetical order, Thunderstrike, Vanguard, and Warrior.
Okay.
So Sacrosanct, even though it's an archer there, I would pick a Thundercat on there instead for a guy. Yeah, so that one.
So okay. The couple things about Sacrosanct. Before Thunderstrike was released, which is the newest Stormcast Eternal subfaction, Sacrosanct was sort of like the most elite of the Stormcast as far as points per model went, and the lists were really kind of difficult to fit together because they didn't really have any kind of cheap units. And then they introduced Gryph-hounds to all the factions, which helped. And then the other thing to keep in mind about Sacrosanct is we do have a pedigreed list to use, which went from being a meme list to being like something we really do have to consider. And it is, at least for me, it didn't necessarily change the way I thought about list composition, but it challenged a lot of preconceived notions that I may have had about list building. And that, of course, is Thundercats.
And if you hadn't heard, so it's a leader on a Dracoline, and then also three evocators evocators on Dracolines. It comes out to 1,000 points even.
And what it does is, obviously, you have a big threat in each deployment group. Everybody's fast, and evocators and Dracolines, they're Stormcast. They're incredibly tanky. They do decent damage, and with 4 10-inch move models that do not have the mounted keyword, they can really contest the board and put a lot of wounds anywhere they want, any battle round, starting battle round 1. So it's not what, like, at least when I was first looking at lists for Stormcast, what I would have put together to be representative of Stormcast evocators or Stormcast Sacrosanct, but you can't deny that it was in fact effective. So I think we have to put them in no worse than average, and maybe might be good.
They have to be, well, yeah, they have to be at least in might be good. The question I would ask is, if you're going to put them in good, this kind of is the issue of, like, is, so there's one good list that we know of, right? But the rest of the faction, like, if you're not using Thundercats, if you're not using, okay, maybe not all 4, right? Maybe you just use two cat guys or something like that.
Well, I'll tell you, if you do that, you're not going to fit many other models in there anyway. That's the thing about Sacrosanct, is they are very expensive models. They do not have a good chaff model. They have Griffhounds, but Griffhounds are 150 points. So we're not talking about a chaff model. We're talking about a mid-range model. And 2, they're really good because of their triple. And so they have really big diminishing returns after the first one, because you're so rarely going to have 2 triples to use in a round. So the list just become, I think, really awkward. And I think we can put them in might be good. I would hesitate to put them in good, just because of the list building constraints that they have.
I think that's a reasonable place to put it. Again, they're sort of limited, but there's the one good list, but they're sort of limited by that. If I saw other lists, like other ways to build them, I could be convinced to put them in good. But definitely, it's definitely something you're going to have to contend with, as if you're going to be in a competitive tournament. Someone could build this pretty easily and bring it. And as I understand, versus another good list, it'll certainly hang with all these other good lists there.
Well, and it's also like it's the Thundercats list, and I could talk about it for a duration of an entire episode, because it really interests me. But it is also kind of counter meta. It is not a chaff spam list, and so like the kind of general rule of thumb going into actually getting some tournaments on the tabletop was the chaff spam lists are sort of something you have to beat. And then the ogres lists were good against the chaff spam lists. And then the contorted epitome was good against ogres. But ogres aren't going to be able to get a lot of use out of might makes right. They're double against
35 hit point Dracoline riders.
Exactly. So now you're looking at, like, well, and can my chaff tie them up? Because they can move 10. They can just disengage and move 10 and put 35 wounds somewhere else. My chaff models aren't good at fighting 35 wound models. So they attack the game, the meta, in a really kind of from a different angle that we haven't seen all the shakedown of yet. Like, do they do well against, like, Slaves to Darkness, who are more mid-rangey and stuff? But
right. And I still want to see how that list performs against. I want to see more examples of how it performs against very, very high model count lists.
Yeah.
Because I still believe that there's TOC missions, for example, like Nexus of Power or Scour, where just by sheer numbers.
What are they going to do on Scour? Scour, the guys, your opponent's is going to push straight across the board. Right. You're going to kill 4 activations to stop them.
Yeah, you're going to kill 2 a turn, but what happens to the numbers?
Yeah. And if you go up against a well-built contorted epitome list, like getting 25% of your warband locked out every single turn, what does that do? To your plan? Like, you're very vulnerable to those kind of strategies. So it's really interesting, and I loved what it did to everybody's kind of thinking. But this is kind of as high as I want to put them right now.
Which one of us is going to build that Thundercats list?
I already have it.
All right.
I went right out and bought Dracolines like immediately. I have it built. Well, it's primed. It's not painted.
Okay. All right. Next up, we got Thunderstrike. So
this is a really interesting one.
So all of them, and all these have Gryph-hounds, which kind of like brings them to at least average.
Yeah, Gryph-hounds are good,
if not higher.
And Thunderstrike also have Vanquishers, which are exactly Gryph-hounds.
Yep, with 5
attack profiles.
With 5 movement, correct?
I don't think Vanquishers move 5. I think they move 4.
Okay, they do have they do have some models that move 5 though.
And then they, instead of their darting attack triple, they have some sort of, like, because they have great swords, right? The Vanquishers are the great sword model. They have some sort of anti-mob, like, AoE attack that's like, okay. But the big takeaway from Thunderstrike, who had the same problem as Sacrosanct, which is all their models are expensive. Like, Gryph-hounds are their cheapest unit at 150 points. Expensive. They do a couple things really well. Obviously, if all your models are expensive, it's because some of them just are really good. But they had trouble getting all the points to fit right and getting enough models on the table. But then Zandire's Truth Seekers came out. And we're not going to get like a deep dive into that. That's next episode. But all those models are really good, which gave Thunderstrike a nice shot in the arm, I think. Like, they got some nice, cheap, much cheaper versions of existing models that were better. So it's hard not to see that as a huge win for the faction.
So where do we put him though? Does that get him out of average though?
No, I think it gets them out of being at the bottom of average into solidly in the mix of average.
Okay. So again, we're not really sorting stuff in the average.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would put them. The debate previously would have been, do we put them in bad or average? And now I think that they skip out of the bad by having, I don't have firm lists yet because this is relatively new information, but it's definitely, the faction got significantly improved by the latest Underworlds warbands. So I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yep. The Thunderstrike ones, I'm not super interested in either. Like, none of the models do really cool stuff. Well, like the Warrior one, we'll get to that one later. Yes. But there's definitely some cooler stuff there in the Warrior one, which kind of like was interesting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So that would give us to Vanguard next.
Yep, right? We had Vanguard next.
So Vanguard was, if not the boogeyman of the game, like Skaven was, they were in the discussion with Aetherwing Spam, which was an incredibly undercosted model that flew, moved 12, and you could bring like 10 of them. And you would just dominate any objective-based mission by just having double-digit 10-inch flyers or 12-inch flyers that would just go grab every treasure or contest every objective. They got a big nerf.
Yep. Now, there's a couple other good models. There's Knight Azeros and Knight Venator, right?
I love those
The big honking leaders. One's a range one.
As our competitive theory, and we are still, as a community, as a Warcry community, in the relatively early stages of competitive theory. But as our theory adapts and catches up to some of these kind of out-of-the-box lists, one of the things that we've seen do well that maybe a lot of us weren't anticipating were these lists that can efficiently and quickly project their power to specific points on the battlefield and get them. They're not burning activations in round one. They are, in fact, doing effective things with those activations. And that can kind of help even up that activation disparity by like the more chaffy models. And the Knight Azeros and the Knight, what's the other one?
Venator, the range guy. They
are very good power projection units. The range guy can fly 10 and shoot.
Yep.
Fairly effectively.
He's pricey though for that. He's 310, but the Knight Azeros at 250 is pretty affordable. He's not going to break the bank if you take one. You may want to double up on him potentially.
He's a tanky move 10 flyer with a decent attack profile. Not an elite attack profile, but a good attack profile. And he's tanky because he's a Stormcast unit. So again, I haven't seen the list for these guys that's blown me away. I know we have been kind of kicking around some lists.
Someone at Adepticon, if you want to go simple, you can go one Knight Azeros at 250 and 5 Griffhounds, 6 bodies.
And that's fine, but again, those Griffhounds are only okay when you're not getting good value out of that triple, and 4 of them every round are not going to do that.
Right. Yeah, the free disengage or
the attack and disengage. Yep. So yeah, they can make a free attack and then disengage, which is really good. Because obviously you get the attack, and then your opponent, if they want to counterattack, has to waste an action moving back into combat. So it's a good damage ability plus a good survivability ability.
So the other thing they're kind of known for is these Raptor Primes, where they have some decent shooting.
They do.
You have 3 attacks, strength 4, typically like a 2/6.
The problem, of course, is getting enough bodies on the field where that shooting is going to be impactful. You can't get massed fire out of this faction like Skinks can.
Right. And at 200 points, there's a couple other range options in Warrior Chamber again that we might want to also talk about.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know where you want to put these guys. I would put them in probably average. A couple of good models, but it's going to struggle.
Yeah, probably average. I could see maybe might be good. Well, they definitely would have been good before with like the pre-nerf Aether Wings, but
and you can still take a couple. You can still take a couple Aether Wings. They're just not nearly as good as they used to be. They're significantly more expensive. They did not get a 5-point nerf. It was like a 20-point nerf.
Yeah, I think we put them in average.
Yeah,
and I
think that's fine.
So Warriors now, I'm going to talk a little bit about these since I did more of a deep dive on them.
Yeah.
And I shipped you a set of the list that I was looking at here. So I'm going to say these things might be good. I think there's something here. So it's not everything, though.
You have the units that are exciting.
Yes.
Prosecutors.
Yep, the flying dudes.
And Judicators.
Yep. Specifically, they have Thunderbolt crossbows. So they, 5 attacks, strength 4, 2/4, 200 points.
An outrageous shooting profile.
Yes. Now here's the thing, and then I'll shout out to TheSaltySea on this because he kind of opened my eyes to this. He posted like a sample list. He hadn't tested it, but he was talking about. He sort of opened my eyes to identifying like, okay, what are the key units that we care about here, and then I started doing more of a deep dive and looked at different combinations of them to see, all right, is there a combination of these units that kind of fits close to 1,000 points that kind of covers all the bases that we need? And so he had posted something that was like a Protector Prime, 2 of those dudes with Thunderbolt crossbows, a Prosecutor with Grand Blade, and a Griffhound. And so I sort of took that as the base of like, okay, I'm going to pick up these models and I'm going to pick up a couple extra models that sort of fit into that same mold and look at a couple different numbers or look at different combinations of them. So like the Thunderbolt crossbow is amazing. The drawback though is it has range 6 to 15.
Yes.
And so if you lock the guy up in combat, his melee profile is not exciting.
No, he cannot disengage and shoot you.
Right. So I would probably say, okay, it's great. I might not, it's just like mounted units. One is perfectly fine. You're probably not going to get punished. 2, you might get punished by terrain. Likewise, these Thunderbolt crossbows, if you take 2 and your opponent's good, he may be able to punish you for taking that weapon.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but it's definitely something worth taking. The
first one I think is very good.
Yep. The Prosecutors are great. Prosecutor with Grand Blade, 4 attacks, 4 strength, 3/5, 10 move. They have a leader, which is good as well. The leader, you can't take a leader with Grand Blade, but you can take one with double hammers. He comes with a range attack.
Yeah.
And then again,
his range attack loses 1 attack over his melee attack, but otherwise I believe is the same attack profile. So equally pretty dangerous in melee range and dangerous up to 8 inches out with a 10-inch move. Is a great power projection piece.
Yeah. So again, untested untested, and you're still going to be suffering from a low model count. Like most of these lists that I came up with had 5 models. I wouldn't necessarily put them in good until they get tested, but they're definitely might be good. I think they have the tools. They have solid enough flyers and can take enough of them. They're tanky enough. 20 hit points a piece at least. There's definitely some very, very slow units you probably don't ever want to take. The protectors have a 3-inch range, which kind of makes up for it. And so he might, if you want to take a foot slogger, he's probably the first one I take. They do make a regular guy with a Star Soul Mace who hits like a truck with a 4/8 profile. I'm gonna build one of him too, maybe mess with him. But yeah, I think there's definitely something there as a low model count elite warband. And if you guys saw last week how I modeled them, right? Flavor wise, I'm excited by them, and that's really the most important thing, right? If they look cool, then that's half the battle.
Absolutely. So next is Sylvaneth.
Sylvaneth, yep. So Sylvaneth, I think, are solidly in the good category.
They got not one but 2 Underworlds warbands that added a lot of interesting abilities and models to them. They also have they have really good heavy hitters in the Kurnoth Hunters with Great Blades. They have those, is it Dryads that can teleport? Somebody can teleport.
I think they're Tree Revenants.
But yeah, just a really good mix of units. They're going to get new units coming up with the new Codex, or whatever they call them in Age of Sigmar, but they have new materials coming out from Games Workshop with new models. I think that they're a very solid faction.
Yeah, they have a lot of tools. Again, the Arch Revenant that you see there, he's a big, has a flyer, so you have access to flying. Everything projects power. Scathe moves quickly and has a range attack. Really, just kind of go back to SaltySea's tournament coverage where he talked with, I think it was Kyle Murray, 4-0'd Adepticon with Sylvaneth.
Yeah, it was a Scathe list. Yeah.
Definitely some finesse to it though, but yeah, I think they definitely have the tools.
They have all the tools. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, next up. So we're gonna do this. Let's make this now.
Tarantulos Brood.
Yep. Add a row above.
So here's the thing about Tarantulos Brood. We have been actually testing them locally quite a bit. And not only do they math out insane on paper, which they do, but the way they play on the board is, if anything, even better than they play on paper. Spiders are the most insane unit in the entire game. They're outrageously undercosted. They move fast. They do a ton. They have 8 attacks. They do, not only do they do a good amount of damage, but their damage output is very consistent because they roll so many dice.
Yeah, you don't care about crit fishing. You're going to get a steady, what's the number, like 4.67 per attack, like every time.
And it really doesn't change much based on opposing toughness, because you're rolling crits for damage almost all the time anyway. So they're just as good at mobbing down mid-range and tough units as they are cleaning up other chaff units. They move fast. Their leader is not only a decent glass cannon fighter in his own right that is fast and has a lot of attacks, but triple is pretty nutty. They have the Soulblight Gravelord ability on a triple to bring back a chaff unit. The difference is that their chaff unit moves 6 and has 8 attacks. So you just push forward. You can be incredibly aggressive. The best case scenario is in the first round, somebody kills one of your spiders, so you can bring it right back. It's outrageous how good it is.
Yeah. So I played one, and I was on the receiving end of this one game. So Kyle played, or not Kyle. So Zach played his Bone Splitters against you, and it was like not even a match.
So I think I could have tabled him on turn 2.
Yeah. I played Skaven against you, and it was a little bit more. It was a little bit more of a game, but I was still completely outmatched. See, it attacks on 2 fronts. So you can either try to burn down spiders, and you're playing a full 15 models.
Yes.
Your list.
My list is 15 models, 955 points.
Yeah, you choose it. Yeah, you want to make sure that you are maxing out your model count over, say, and taking like a second or a third netter.
A third netter. That's the other option. You could cut spiders for a third netter, but I just wanted more spiders.
Yeah, and so trying to like get back the activation advantage, you can burn down spiders to try to even that out, but then the Broodlord's triple just sets you back. And so you can either try that, or the other angle of attack is you try to maybe single out a Broodlord and kill the Broodlords, which is the engine which generates the spiders. But can you do that before the spiders take you down?
Yes, then you're not killing 3-4 spiders, and that's a big deal.
And oh by the way, while doing that and trying to decide which one of those plans of attack to try to like stop this, you also have to play the objectives for the mission as well, because that came up too. Like, because this is a treasure mission we played, I think, and I was like, oh shoot, I need to save an activation for a guy to go grab a chest. I'd almost forgot about that because I was so focused on trying to like deal with like the big issue in front of me, which was like,
the 15 models.
Yes.
And then we're not talking 15 like move 3, 3 attacks, 1/3 damage models. They move 6 and they have 8 attacks.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Yeah. So in terms of chaff versus chaff, right? A lot of times we see chaff fight chaff, and it's a slap fight, right? One will kill the other.
Kill each other.
Yeah,
they don't round 4.
Right. They kill each other, but not very quickly. Some chaff hits. The heavy hitting chaff obviously will win those battles quicker, but this is like heavy hitting chaff. Like you take that versus a regular chaff model, especially when you have like 2 or 3 spiders gang up.
And they can, because you have 10 of them. 11. My list has 11 spiders in it. And so they can 2 and 3v1 enemy models consistently the whole game.
Yep. And then also the other thing, so broken in terms of power level, and I would also, if you want to use another adjective to describe it, I would call it oppressive. Because it was not fun. Like I will take a beating and I will learn from a beating, but it was not fun.
It's not like you can walk away from that game and be like, oh, here's what I learned for next time. It was, what I learned is that this list is unbeatable on the table.
I think the only thing we haven't tested yet was be like run ogres against it.
Yes.
To see if maybe ogres can.
The twin Thunderfist list, if they can kill enough spiders in the first round. But take 2 Broodlords for sure, because you want to make sure you have that triple available. And then I took 2 netters. Also, they have a decent netter unit. So if you want to run up like a big heavy hitter to try to assassinate a Broodlord, you might just get bogged down with a net and mobbed by spiders. They're as good as everyone tells you they are.
Yeah. And like even like a points increase, I'm not sure a points increase solves the problem either, because you're
if you can still take 6 or more spiders, the list is going to be broken.
Yeah. I mean, even if like say spiders were like a 75-point unit, which is what it might be costed if it was costed honestly, and then you still have a res that brings back 75 points worth of value.
And you could double the cost of spiders. Like I said, my list has 11 and it's 955 points. So if you doubled the cost, you could still take 6 or 7, and that's still too many spiders to be balanced. I don't know what they're going to do about it unless there's just a gentleman's agreement where people don't play it, because spiders is really, really good.
And that it might be that you see that a lot in other games too, right? There's all right, for this tournament, there's a gentleman's agreement. It's not an outright ban, but you're kind of a dick if you bring this.
Yes, absolutely.
Or maybe not, like, or something isn't officially banned, but the TO bans it for that tournament, saying, all right, gentleman's agreement, no one brings this.
Yes. So we've only been playing them locally with a clear agreement with both players that this is to test and see, to gather data. If you bring it to a casual game, you're a monster. You're a monster. Yeah. There's no coming back.
All right. So next up, Tzeentch Mortals. No, this is demons.
These are demons. It's confusing because there's demons as both models. I'm going to defer. I don't know a ton about Tzeentch.
I think they're average at best, but I even don't know how good Tzeentch demons shooting is.
It used to be pretty okay, I think. They had the flamers, right? Were okay?
Yeah, the flamers are good. You had screamers, which are like a glass cannon flyer. You have the horrors. which are they have the split ability, but yeah, like you're burning doubles and triples to do that. They actually
It's
they're
not
super,
the
and
split
they're not super
ability
deep.
is not as good in this game as it is in other Games Workshop games where it is an innate ability.
Yeah.
Warcry does not support innate abilities, so their abilities cost dice.
Also, the trick is the unit has to be wounded. However,
not dead.
Jolly was telling us that he would run his hordes over dangerous terrain and just take a point of damage.
Sure.
And then
because you want to split them. That's the goal. You want to split as often as possible. But it's harder to do in this game than it is in other games. So we said at the beginning of this that we would be very upfront if we didn't know a lot about a faction, and that's what I have to do here. I don't know enough about Tzeentch.
I think we just put them on. I think we just put them on average. They have the shooting. They have flyers.
If you can get splits off, split is good.
Yeah, the shootings. So I got the book out in front of me. Flamebird Tzeentch, 165. They move 8. They have natural fast movement as well. Some of these guys. 3 attacks, 3 strength, 2 4. There's bigger flamers at 220 with more hit points, 30 hit points, 4 attacks. I think there's definitely something there.
Sounds like there's some pieces there that keep them from being completely, useless on the table. They have things they do well, which sounds to me like an average warband.
Any experts on Tzeentch, let us know.
Absolutely.
Oh, speaking of which, I forgot to mention this earlier. So we had someone in the comments, because we talked about KO last week, and he dropped this amazing comment. It was like a mini dissertation in the comments, because he's a KO player, and it was like the pros and cons of all this stuff. And then I don't know what happened, if he deleted the comment or if YouTube deleted the comment, but it was some amazing stuff, man. Hats off to you. I didn't even get the name because the comment disappeared, but that's the sort of like deep dive analysis that we strive for, and that was some amazing stuff. Please come back to the comment section wherever you were. Talk about KO. Talk about anything else that you know about.
Absolutely.
We love that stuff.
There are a couple of warbands in this game, more than a couple, that I feel really knowledgeable and that I can talk about with a lot of understanding, and there's many that I do not. So
yeah, and I was chatting with this about you yesterday, right? It would be, again, based on speculation. I hope that the new version of Warcry or Gurcry or whatever, the new setting, does not fundamentally change the game a whole lot. I want to see all these warbands here. I want to see the game fundamentally stay the same, because it would be a shame. There's so much of this game that we haven't explored. Like we haven't explored, we haven't explored Thundercats. I haven't, personally played and experienced the Squig Hopper boss list, or the Nurgle Plague Bear spam list. There's so much stuff you can do in this game that we haven't experienced yet. It would be a shame for all that to be discarded with a new version that sort of like got rid of all this and like reset everything. So I hope to God that's not the case.
And that's the thing about Warcry, is that it's a really interesting design, because if you take a first pass at it, a surface level pass at the rules, you might come away saying this game is very simple. It doesn't seem like it has enough strategic depth to be truly engaging. But the way that all these different factions fit together, they plumbed a lot of strategic depth out of a set of relatively simple rules, which is an achievement, because simple rules with strategic depth is a really good combination for a game to have. And so, yeah, there's a lot of space left to explore here. It is not a solved game, except that spiders beats everything.
Yeah.
That's solved.
Pretty much, yeah. All right, so next up we got Tzeentch Mortals. So
this one, you like the Aviarchs, so you can talk about that for a minute.
I like the Aviarch. I also like Fate Master as well. The other, he's slightly smaller flying dude.
That's the one that it's hard to get modeled these days, right? The Fate Master.
Yes. However, I got a plan for that.
Okay.
So this is something, again, too many warbands, too little time. This is on my short list though. So we'll start by talking about the flyers. So they have some really good flyers. Again, if you're going to look at a short list of best allies to take, Enlightened Aviarch on disc is one of them.
If mobility is your issue and you're playing chaos and allies are an option, you need to take a really hard look at Aviarchs on discs. They bring a lot to the table.
Yep, 5 attacks, 4 strength, 2/4, 265 points, 30 hit points. So besides that, they also have the Fate Master, who's a slightly smaller flyer. And someone was talking about it in Discord with that. Someone brought it up, and I looked at that one. That one's almost as good. It's like a discount Aviarch on disc. He actually has a triple that gives a party buff of +1 attack. Affects him. I think it affects himself, but it's a 9-inch range. So he, it definitely affects himself. So if he's under the effects of that, he hits just as hard as the Enlightened Aviarch, and he's 20 points less. He's got a few less hit points, but he's good. My idea for modeling this is going to be to use a couple of 40k Thousand Sun sorcerers on discs. They don't have obvious guns, and
take the backpacks off.
I'd probably just keep the backpacks on.
All right.
I might even just keep the backpacks on. Who knows? I actually don't. I'm not even sure they have that obvious backpacks.
Maybe they don't.
Regardless, I mean, they're just gorgeous models. So you build around that. And the other thing to keep in mind, the other thing to talk about with this warband is the chaff. Your base chaff model is a 75 pointer, Sangors with pairs of Savage Blades. Again, standard chaff attack profile, 3 attacks, 3 strength, 1/4. But he has 15 hit points. That's your basic chaff model. Every other chaff model you're looking at 8 to 10.
Yeah, or less.
So this is really interesting. This means that when you're playing with your chaff does not get shifted as easily.
It's if your opponent has mapped out his list on activation advantage based on his models being able to efficiently kill chaff, that is really going to throw off the game plan because they take twice as long to kill.
Right now it takes a double attack, right? A move attack. If he's picked his unit, so like, okay, yep, I know that I can consistently move attack and kill a chaff model. Well, you can't do that anymore. It's going to take 2 rounds.
Yeah.
So you say it's a party fighter on an objective, your model's going to hang around longer. So I think that's really interesting. They also have Sangors with Savage Great Blades, kind of a little bit pricier at 105, but they get that attack buff from the Fate Masters. And so I'm looking at lists again for a short list of models. You're looking at the Enlightened Aviarchs on disc, the Skyfire Aviarch, potentially he's expensive, he has a range attack. There's a Shaman on a disc, I think, Fate Master. There's a number of different good flyers, and then some amount
Zangers
of chaff.
are good. Yeah.
Yep. So some amount of that. The other one that kind of stands out, he's expensive and he's a super glass cannon. There's one Kyric Acolyte with a good shooting attack. He's got a magic attack, 4 attacks, strength 4, 2/4, but he's 10 hit points and costs 145. So he dies very, very easily, but most of the time shooting attacks are very, very lackluster. That's a powerful shooting attack at 145.
Absolutely.
And
so where would you put them?
I think they're good.
Okay.
I think they're good. They are. You had folks talking about, again, hey, let's do 4 flyers for this, right?
Yeah.
Comparing it, with the Thundercats list. Man, maybe not. I think the mixture of flyers and chaff is good.
There's lists.
You got to be careful. You got to be careful about just saying, all right, I'm going to jam 4 flyers and go, because when you're talking about flyers, they're 20, 25 hit point flyers and they're melee. They're going to get in there and they're going to bang and they're going to take some damage back.
There are lists out there where maximizing your heavy hitters and minimizing the chaff that you're required to take is fine. But there are also lists out there where cutting your chaff models to fit in better heavy hitters is a real cost. And this might be one of them. Giving up on those anglers might not be what you want to do. You might want to make room for those in addition to your flyers. So some interesting space to explore.
Yep.
Unmade.
Aesthetically pretty amazing.
Yes, they are the Hellraiser faction. They do one thing really well, and that is the Blissful one. They're sort of like Corvus Cabal, where they have like some models. I mean, you know, they do some stuff.
They have one you really care about.
One you really care about, and that's the Blissful one, who is fast and hits hard, but is kind of glass cannony. 2 Blissful ones, and then fill in the rest is a legit strategy. Your Blissful ones can get across the board. They're good assassins. They don't want to trade blows, but they can swoop in and do a lot of damage. The faction abilities do a lot to allow you to like pin other units in place and debuff them, so your Blissful ones can come in and finish them off. Really interesting faction as far as a bespoke faction goes. Yep. I think they're one of the better bespoke factions.
Your chaff has flails.
Yes.
With range 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Some decent abilities, and you know, if you're smart and you use your Blissful ones correctly, where you're not leaving them out in the open to get picked off, but you're using them to kind of strike the right place at the right time, I think you could have a lot of success with the Unmade.
So based on that, so they're like one of the bespoke warbands with like one good model that you're going to run 2 of. You put them kind of with the Corvus Cabal in the might be good category.
I would. Okay. I think they play very similarly to Corvus Cabal in a lot of ways, and they have their weaknesses obviously, but they can be really fun to play. And if you like the play style of just like picking your spot and then bringing in a wrecking ball to just that everyone's going to be afraid of, I think they'd be a great choice.
Yeah, one of the tournaments, I think it was one of the Polish tournaments, someone brought a Blissful one as an ally.
Yes, I saw that. Very interesting.
Yep.
It's a good model. It does what it does very well, and that is get across the board and fight.
Yep. And then lastly, so Untamed Beasts. So again, in the model of like bespoke warbands with one MVP that's going to carry you, I think they go and might be good.
That's the Rockhounds, right?
Yep, Rock Tusk Prowler.
Yes.
Yep, so he's good. He's a Griffhound. You can take a whip guy to get free attacks off of him. The leader's okay. The second in command, the first Fang, he's a neat guy. He has a pull ability, which normally I like. But if you're going to be going in on the double Rock Tusk list, there might not be room for the big spear guy with the pull ability. Your stock list is going to be a leader, 1 whip guy, 2 Rock Tusk Prowlers, fill the rest out with Plains Runners.
Plains Runners are sort of like the default, slightly better than average chaff in that they are a chaff model, but they move 5. They're fine. They're fine.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. If you're getting into the game, Untamed Beasts are, I mean, they got some good Conan aesthetic. One box would be okay. You get that second box for the second Rock Tusk, and now you're talking.
Unfortunately, like a lot of the bespoke warbands, you have to take the leader, right? It's a requirement. Yep. It's not like Unmade, who we just talked about, where the leader is what gets you excited about the faction, the Blissful one, where taking 2 of them is like awesome. You're just stuck taking the leader. You have to do it. He's not going to perform outrageously well point for point. But
actually, he's actually not bad. The leader's only 170. You're only paying 170 for the leader.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's terrible. I'm just saying that you don't have options. You have to take him. He's fine. Mm-hmm. He's fine. But that's just something to deal with the bespoke warbands. They did not put a lot of really exciting leaders in there. That just wasn't the way they decided to go with it. But solid. For one of the better bespoke warbands for sure.
All right. One thing I want to do before we kind of save this off and do final thoughts. There were a couple things based on the analysis from our last episode. I did want to kind of move some stuff around for consistency. So we talked about Khorne Demons being in the might be good category based on the availability of just flesh hounds. By that same token, then, I think we put Khorne Bloodbound, the Mortals, in that same category as well. Just because they don't have gore hounds, but they have flesh hounds, and they have a lot more variety and, again, pretty good chaff. So I think those go in the might be good category based on the strength of that. So we bumped them up a little bit. And then also I did take another look at K-Knight Shadowstalkers. There's nothing terribly bad. They're bad in comparison to their sister faction, the Daughters of Cain, but they're not actively bad. Everything we're looking at in the bad category is
pretty bad.
Your high toughness, overcosted 3-inch move, or pillow fisted, right? They have certain things that make them actively bad.
If you play one of those 4 factions, your very first game against any other faction on this board, you will realize very quickly that you are just at a significant disadvantage, just from the list selection stage. And I agree with you that they can at Shadowstalkers would not necessarily give you that feeling. I don't think they're very good, but the leader's fine. I know now they're not like offensive.
Yeah, no one came to defend him in the comments, so I mean we can't say much more than that.
Yeah.
And I stand by the descriptions here of broken good, might be good, average bad. You could turn this into SABCD, but I think that's downplaying the fact that like all these, we have a lot of warbands here. How many? 16 warbands in the average category there. That means they're not bad. They are lower 50%, but they're perfectly serviceable when played against the any of the other ones, or something like a tier above.
Yeah, the separation between might be good and average is less, I think, than the good and might be good.
And that's important. Yeah, and that's something important to kind of think about, right? In terms of like, what's the spread, right? There could be like these multiple tiers, but if the overall spread is narrow, that's a sign of a good game.
Yes.
And I think there's not a lot of gap here between like there's definitely not a lot of gap between might be good and average.
Agreed. There's a slightly bigger gap between good and might be good, and then there's an insane gap between broken and everything else, obviously. And besides the bad warbands, which there are not very many of, considering how many there are in the game, the fact that any of them exist is obviously an issue, and it's a shame because some of these warbands have great models or great lore, and people like them. And I would love to see Games Workshop take a balancing pass at them to get them more competitive. But outside of those 4 warbands, you can play games with just about any pairing on this board, which is great.
So we're going to save this off. This is actually tied to my account on Tier Maker. So I can fire this up and we can juggle stuff around at a later date, which is kind of neat. And then we'll take this list. We'll kind of like, I'll put a little graphic on it and stuff like that, and be like, all right, we'll post this. Put a couple of the notes on there.
Yeah.
But I think this might be a useful resource. Get some people talking.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna close up by talking about upcoming events.
So the one we're hosting. Our last one was at Epic Loot in the greater Dayton area. And our next one is going to be at Mavericks in the greater Cincinnati area, northern Cincinnati. Mavericks, great little game store, really good if you are a Games Workshop enthusiast. They have a great selection. They have a lot of boards. They have some knowledgeable staff.
Yep. And, kind of short notice if you're listening to this, but if you can make it, right now it's Sunday night, and I'm going to start putting some advertisements up on Discord, the local LFG channel. We had a couple other folks that we hadn't met that are in that area. Maybe we can get them to come out. So yeah, come on, show up. Maybe we get some other strangers that are interested in it as well from Mavericks. I'm going to be posting on their Discord as well.
The events the Dayton Warcry Club does were very, very casual. It's very beginner friendly. We'd love to have people come by with questions, or we have between the active members of our group, we probably have people with 40 distinct warbands. You're welcome to come borrow them.
Well, half of them are yours.
You are correct, but you're welcome to come borrow them and learn to play. If you've been like just collecting models or interested in the game, we have all the terrain and all the warbands you could ever want. If you wanted to actually get some on-table experience to find out if it's for you.
Yep, and we're gonna do another one. We probably shoot to do another one in July, one of the weekends in July, based on your guys' availability. Try to do these like once a month, and we're just gonna pick a different game store every time. Also, we talked about this one in the last episode. There's a Warcry tournament in Willoughby, Ohio. east of Cleveland, a little bit of a drive for us. Link to the Facebook event in the description there. The TOC is also on Discord as well if you're interested in that one, I think.
And if I could just interject real quick, I cannot stress this enough. If you have an interest in seeing a sustainable and consistent competitive, even like the friendly, casual competitive scene grow for a game like Warcry, the best thing you can possibly do is look in your local area and see events and just show up for them. Make sure they fire, because when one event's fired, the store is more likely to run a second event. And if that fires, then it starts to become a regular thing. And that's how you grow a scene. And we have a lot of experience sort of building out niche games into like sustainable local scenes from scratch. And the best thing you can do is show up for your events and tell your friends and bring people.
And even though it's quote unquote competitive, they tend to be super friendly.
Yes.
I was watching both the competitive events both days at Adepticon, and there was some good players there, but definitely everyone was very, very friendly, and there weren't the sort of feel bads you might expect from other war games like 40K.
War games tend to have a bad reputation as a competitive games for that kind of thing, like angle shooting type players, and I just have not seen it at all in Warcry.
Yep. And then finally, so coming up, Gen Con.
Big boy.
Yep. So I'm signed up for Gen Con. I made arrangements. I made arrangements to get a room. So I'm signed up. There are 8 slots left the last time I checked for the tournament.
This will be the biggest event of the year, almost certainly.
Well, yeah. So if you have 16 people there, that is going to be bigger than the tournament they had at Adepticon. So yes, that would be the largest
if
Warcry
it gets
tournament
all
ever.
24 slots fill out. We're not talking. This isn't a type of game where you're going to get right now 1,100 people to show up and have a huge 2-day tournament, right? Like, this scene is being built out from scratch. A 24-player event is going to inform the competitive mindset for the next calendar year. And so if you want to be a part of that, this is a great opportunity to make your mark on the list people are talking about for a long time to come.
Yep. Something I want to do, maybe next episode or the one after that, we get Jolly on as a guest as well.
That's a good idea.
Like plug it. Yeah.
So, like I said, if you want to see Gen Con next year have 2 24-person tournaments, show up to this one. You know, that's the best thing you can do to help the scene grow. Tell your friends, bring people, lend out your models, borrow your friends' models, show up, and it'll grow. That's just how it works. Very exciting stuff. I'm really looking forward. I'm really hoping to make the Gen Con trip, but Dayton Warcry will be there for sure.
I will be there representing. I'm gonna probably hit some swag as well, of some form.
Yeah, that's it. That's a lot of content in this particular episode. I really, I could talk about list building. That's obviously my passion in this game all day. So I appreciate the opportunity to come on and just ramble about like literally every faction in the game. And I can't wait to continue to analyze and dissect these lists as they come in from these events.
Yeah, I had a great time putting this list together and chatting with you. I think we learned a lot during the process, and we hope you find it informative as well. For our next episode, we'll have our thoughts on the new Underworld's warbands in the upcoming White Dwarf. That's should be coming out at the end of this week. We'd probably be calling upon your services to kind of look at that as well. We really like a lot of the new fighters and some of the options they give you, though, from what we've seen.
I think that I like some of them a lot more than the community consensus that I've seen, so I'm really interested to dissect that and talk about that and the kind of the reasons why and, you know, how we would build it.
Yep. Until then, pass on the word about our YouTube channel or find us on the official Warcry Discord. I'm War Machine.
I'm Fred Shred.
Thanks for listening.
All right, what was next? What's next? What are we doing?
What are we doing?